In this video, I'm going to talk about my journey into heat exhaustion. And this little adventure, I think I just sort of crawled out of just today. While I had heat exhaustion, I conducted a small little experiment on myself and observed how my body reacted. And what I discovered is kind of what motivated this video. And that discovery, which again is not an amazing discovery, it's just an interesting thing that my body did, is going to lead me into some speculation. And while I'm speculating, I'll use words like homeostatic set point. And my only, small warning is that I by no means am a specialist. This video is more just like, oh, this cool thing happened. Here's, I don't know, some thoughts. What do you think? That's sort of like the vibe of the video. So let me just quickly remind everyone what homeostatic regulation and thermoregulation is all about. And it's all about trying to maintain balance. And temperature, body temperature, is one of like the key examples that they give. And the main idea is that if you get too hot, it sort of brings you back to the set point, 98.6. And if you get too cold, it again brings you back to 98.6. which is the set point. And so that balance is represented by this scale over here. And if, for example, your brain detects that you are getting too hot, some of the mechanisms that it uses is it can cause you to sweat. It can cause your blood vessels to dilate, get bigger, so that you release more heat through your skin. And then you can do like behavioral things like just get into the shade. And all of these things will lead to your balance being restored for your temperature. Similarly, if you're getting very cold, your brain will detect that, cause your blood vessels to constrict, maybe cause you to shiver, maybe stimulate brown fat cells, leading to so-called non-shivering thermogenesis, which I kind of understood that animals do kind of when they're hibernating, but I didn't realize that humans had some sort of parallel mechanism to that. So this is what homeostasis kind of is about. And as I was very quickly, I didn't do any sort of real literature review, but I did find an interesting paper that challenged the idea of like, what is the meaning of a set point and some of these vocab words that we use. They had some interesting points. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you can look at that paper. Now, within the idea of homeostasis and thermoregulation is the notion that sometimes the brain can adjust what that set point is. And so we're all familiar that when you get a fever, that homeostatic set point is put to a higher value. So you can see over here before, this is the set point, this dashed line, and the temperature will sort of oscillate around it. Once it's set quite high, then the brain is like, oh, look, you're not there yet. And so mechanisms are undertaken, maybe your blood vessels are constricted, whatever, and your body temperature keeps climbing until you hit that set point. And then if you get too high, the body will induce sweating and stuff like that, and you'll oscillate about that point. And this happens if you have an infection or inflammation, you're battling against some sort of pathogen, and I guess this helps the immune response. So that's the idea. The graph of sort of like the fever. And then here's a similar graph, but this is for hyperthermia. Hyper meaning that your body temperature is higher than it should be. And so in this situation, you can see the dashed line doesn't change at all. The set point is always at 98.6. That's the ideal that you want to be at. And what you can see is that initially the person is oscillating, and then all of a sudden it starts to go up. And this might be because it's wicked hot outside, maybe you're exercising, and for whatever reason your cooling ability is not significant enough to bring your core body temperature down. And so it begins to come higher and higher and higher and higher. But again, the idea is that if you're able to bring your core body temperature down, it's going to stay at this level, at that set point. And what I'm going to share in this video is that I don't know, for me, for the little experiment that I conducted, this is not what happened when I was in a state of hyperthermia. Something different happened to me. And so that's where I get into speculation. So what happened? So June 24th, just, this last Tuesday is when I experienced, heat exhaustion. Before that, I was doing all the right stuff. I was doing heat acclimation. I was just getting used to the heat. And, I live in Lexington, Massachusetts, so here, the maximum it gets to is like 100 degrees or whatever, so I don't need air conditioning, I don't use fans, I just sweat because I feel like that's a good way to build endurance. So that's what I was doing. My body was used to the heat. And then Tuesday came about and time to run. And I wanted to run. I wanted to test myself. But I was not crazy, so I drank good fluids. I was well hydrated. I ate a lot of salty foods, so I had electrolytes in my system. I waited for the sun to go down because I know I'm getting older now. So I want to be logical. So I went at 7 o'clock. And it was still pretty hot then. It was 95 degrees when I started. I did my most strenuous run, I guess. It was an hour long and has a hill, goes through different terrain, the trails and road and stuff like that. And I gave myself more time, so I took 9 extra minutes, which is pretty significant. And I've experienced heat. I haven't actually gotten heat stroke, but I've gotten very close to it, so I know what it feels like. And I made sure I didn't feel that, and so I thought I was doing a good job with it. I guess I wasn't as much. By the time I got home, my fingers were swollen, my brain felt swollen, which again I've felt, especially the fingers swollen, many times before. I felt like dizzy, I was having difficulty balancing, but not anything crazy. I was feeling weak, my movements were very slow and lethargic, my head was really hurting, my neck and back were cramping, I felt feverish, my lymph nodes kind of felt like a wet bag of marbles. They're not huge or anything, they're just like, and again, none of these things were like way outside of something that I've never experienced before. I've experienced all of this before, so I wasn't very, very concerned. I ate a lot of dinner with salt, I drank tons of water, I ate bananas, went to bed early. Night was unpleasant because I had cramps and pain, I kept waking up, stuff like that. Then the next day I woke up, I was actually using a fan because I wanted to make sure that this was the first time I was using a fan in the summertime. And I mostly rested during the day, and I was feeling good enough so that when a friend came, I hung out with him and his family from 3 to 8 p.m. We went and got ice cream, I was outside, it was like, I think it almost got to be 100 degrees that day. And I was okay. And then Wednesday night came, and then thunderstorms came with it. And I think this is what makes my situation different. The ambient temperature went from high 90s to 60s, pretty much in just a few hours. And by the nighttime, I started feeling a little bit feverish. I had a 99-degree temperature. Then when I woke up on Thursday, I had a 101.4 degree fever, but my body was feeling really cold because it was cold outside. It was rainy and 60. I was super duper tired, so I just slept all day. I had the shooting headache on my left side. My neck and back were cramped. I wasn't hungry at all. I also discovered I got jock's itch, I had this fertile crescent, which I still do actually right now, of just red rash in my inner thigh, and the lymph node in that region, in my, upper groin area, were inflamed as well. So I just lay in bed all day long. And then Friday is really the day when the experiment began. So I'll share that. So again, I woke up in the morning, same exact thing as the day before. I had a 101 degree fever. My body was like really cold because it was cold outside. And then by 2 p.m., I wasn't feeling that bad, but my family was like, look, you need to go and get some blood report done. Because I don't have a primary care physician, because I don't usually get sick. So they're like, get the blood report, get the urine report. So I was like, all right, fine. So I went there, and I was really kind of surprised because when they took my temperature, it was 98.2. And I was like, this is really weird. I didn't expect my temperature to drop so suddenly. So I was kind of baffled, really, by this. I was like, maybe I'm getting better. And the PA, she was like, yeah, maybe you're getting better. So this was a note of positiveness. I come home, I'm tired, so I'm feeling pooped, I'm feeling cold, so I wrap myself up in a blanket, and I just lay there for like 3 hours. And then as I get up for dinner, and I had a Zoom meeting with my human augmentation group, I discovered I had a 101 degree fever, which is crazy. 101 in the morning, got down to 98.2, and then 101 again. Like, what is going on? This was really, really unusual. And I came up with the hypothesis that maybe my thermoregulation, my ability, my homeostatic set point has just sort of shattered, had broken. And I was like a cold-blooded animal. Like, whatever my environmental situation was like, my core body temperature just acquired that. That was one idea I had, but I wanted to test it. So then what I did is I sat in front of the fan for an hour, cooling myself. And surprisingly enough, my body temperature went from the 101 fever to 98.6. So that was unbelievable. And here's a clip that you can see that evidence. All right, let's see what I got. 98.6. It's remarkable. Then, to really put this into test, what I did is for an hour, I went into my bed, wrapped myself, I put on my hoodie, wrapped myself up in my blanket because I was feeling cold, and I just lay there. I mean, I was shivering from the fan. And just in an hour, I was at 102-degree fever. It was like, it's kind of unbelievable if you think about it. So no ability to regulate my body. This is different than what we were seeing in this graph. I guess I'll come back to that graph in a second. I also got my urine analysis and blood report, everything normal except for this, AST and ALT. Normally the high end of the normal spectrum is around 40 or 46. Mine was at 73, 67, so it was slightly elevated. What was interesting is that when I went into the literature, this is from a military paper that I'd cited earlier, it turns out that when you have heat exhaustion, these markers actually come out and they designate liver damage. So I don't think my liver has been like significantly damaged, but it does show that my liver was displeased with my behavior. So, okay, here's my speculation. My speculation is that when I got into heat exhaustion, my homeostatic set point, this dashed line, just disappeared in a way. Kind of got shattered or was no longer really there. In contrast to this view, where you actually have that homeostatic set point straight throughout the entire experience. Because again, if the model above is correct, if my core temperature goes down, which I did with the fan, that's where my body temperature should sit then, right? But it turns out that that's not what happened, because then my temperature began to rise up. And you might say, well, if your temperature is rising up when you go inside the bed, well, that might suggest that you have a fever. But again, if I had a fever, then the fan should not have been able to depress my temperature that easily. So again, this is speculation. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is not my research. This is just like, here's what I think. I could be 100% wrong here. But these are just what I thought. I'd be curious to see if someone specializes in this, if they think something similarly. Now, what is kind of interesting is that in the literature, this is the view of hyperthermia, where this stays here. But then in the literature, it does say that when temperature regulation is overwhelmed, there has been one study where the thermostat shifts drastically towards higher values in heat stroke. Again, I'm not sure if it explains what I saw with myself, which also might be a result of the fact that the environmental ambient temperature dropped so much. But this was kind of interesting to see. I was not able to get this paper, it was behind a paywall. I wasn't able to access it. And this from the military paper also says that a common heat stroke recovery response observed in patients in animal models is actually recurrent fever during the days and weeks of recovery. But again, I don't think this is standard fever where your set point is set at a higher value. I think this is a different type, a different category, you could even say, of fever. And they actually talk about an interesting case study. An amateur long-distance runner was hospitalized for 10 days after collapsing during a 6-mile foot race. And this person got moderate fever, 100 degrees, 0.4, very similar to myself. And it was evident during those first 4 days of hospitalization. So this seems to be something that's not completely unique to me. Other people have experienced it, but it also does seem that it's not a mechanism that has been well characterized at all in the literature. And of course, I'm saying this, I haven't done a thorough literature search though. I could be so wrong with that then. Now, what's interesting is that what I'm proposing, maybe not proposing, but what I'm saying is that the homeostatic set point has sort of shattered or broken or is not there anymore, which then causes this unusual behavior where you don't stick at a particular temperature. What's interesting is that that's kind of related to my experiments. And I've actually, before this happened to me, okay, I actually would go out into Brandeis and give these lectures trying to entice people by saying that my task is kind of similar to homeostasis. So it's kind of cool. So here's the premise that I say. What I do is I strap people into a machine like this, they balance. And what you see here is this is kind of like homeostasis. Every time you deviate from that set point, which is gravitational vertical, you have to pull yourself back. And balance control is metaphorically kind of similar to homeostasis, like temperature regulation. That's kind of what I say to entice people in the dynamical systems community to come and hang out and talk to me. Now, I do have one condition where I take people, and I know I forgot to put that video in, I put them on their back. Call it my spaceflight condition. I've got whole videos explaining this better. And there, people get very disoriented. They don't know where they are. It's like I break their set point, and they begin to characteristically drift all over the place. So let me just give you a few examples. So here, again, is an example of someone who knows where they are, and the green line is the homeostatic set point, that 0 degree point, and then the black line is just their position. They go a little bit to the right, they go a little bit to the left, right, left, they're oscillating back and forth. This is like me in normal life. My temperature is oscillating around that 98.5, 6, whatever. Then I put people on their back in my spaceflight condition, and they don't know where they are, their system is broken, and now all sorts of crazy things happen. They begin to oscillate further and further and further and further away until they hit the crash boundary. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. This could also be an example of my body temperature. That like here I am with the fan, and then I go inside the bed, and now my body temperature begins to oscillate and go up and up and up because there's no longer a homeostatic pull that can pull me all the way back. And are there analogs or similarities to what I experienced as a fever person to when I'm in my own machine? It's kind of interesting, like if we mathematically model both of these conditions where you don't have a strong set point or a strong homeostatic pullback mechanism, what happens? Now, yeah, and so this is just me trying to attract people to this. Now, the final thing I want to show is that I've also found similar ideas of the homeostatic set point changing or breaking in addiction. And so this is a paper, you can see the citation on the bottom there. And what they're talking about here is that as you get addicted, what happens to your mood, where you feel happy and content and stuff like that, that set point begins to change as the balance of your hormones begin to change. And now you all of a sudden need these chemicals more and more as that set point is sort of drifting out of control and changing into a new normal. So these are all situations, I would say, that where the homeostatic set point is altered or changed or broken, or that mechanism to pull you back isn't working. My case, the spaceflight analog condition, where people don't have a strong sense of where that balance point is. Maybe thermoregulation right after intense heat exhaustion. Maybe addiction. As you go through that process of getting addicted to a drug. Just speculation. I thought it was kind of interesting. Okay. Thanks.